Hi Falcons, my name is Lauren Parisi and I'm here to talk to you about studying today. As we go to this new semester, it will be very different from everybody. We'll be facing new challenges, but I want to talk to you about how to study smarter rather than harder. First, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Lauren Parisi. I'm an academic center leader here at Albertus, as well as a writing tutor. And I'm also a recent graduate of Albertus. And while I was an undergraduate, I was not very good at studying. Whenever I tried, it just didn't go well. I couldn't focus no matter what I tried to do. So a lot of this presentation is not only research I've done, but also from my firsthand experience and things that I wish people had told me during my undergraduate. So hopefully there'll be some tips in here that will help you. First and foremost, I want to talk about the study cycle. So this has been the scientific proven best method of how to study. Preview, attend, study, review, and assess. We'll talk about these all a little bit more in detail along the way. But I want to mention, first of all, that I am saying proven like this. And I think it's important to note that everybody learns a little bit differently. What works really well for you might not work as well for somebody else. So listen to this all, take it all in this advice, and think hard on it, and figure out what's going to work best for you. So this is all really well done, and it's been proven that students who follow these steps do really well. But let's be real, not everybody has the time to follow all these steps, so I'll be talking about these factors and some other ones that are important to consider in figuring out what is your best studying method. But before we get into the study cycle, it's important to talk about some other factors, such as the who, what, when, where, and how of studying. What you're studying, I hope you should know because that's the classes you're studying for. What subjects are you studying? Who you're studying with? Well, do you study with friends or do you study alone? But when and where are the primary ones here? Where are you able to study? What's a convenient location and what's a practical location? While your dorm room is a really good place, is it the wisest option when your roommate's in there blasting music? Likewise, the caf can be a really good place because you can eat and study all at once, but can you focus with all that noise going on? Or are you somebody that needs absolute silence? Take all these things into consideration. For myself, I always try to have 5 different locations I would rotate through to study there. If you need a place away from campus or away from your house for a bit, a local cafe like Starbucks that has Wi-Fi is always a good option. But a few on-class campus spots, the library, always a good go-to. There are so many different nooks and crannies to go to, and they're all excellent to kind of help yourself focus. The Academic Center is one of them. I highly recommend that one. We have candy. Another good one I found was a tree right outside the library. I personally found a lot of places outside to study because I found it a nice break, and not a lot of people bugged me, and it was a nice day, and I got to enjoy the outside weather while I was doing my work. But there's a tree right outside of Rosary Hall where the hill kind of rises up a little bit, and if you sit behind it, nobody can really see you, but you can kind of see everything else that's going on. So it's a nice private spot to enjoy a good day. So those are a few ones that I like. And ask around. You never know what locations you might like. Sometimes I use an empty classroom as well. So those are good locations to good to go study. Another important thing to consider is time. When are you more productive? When do you absorb the most information? Are you a morning person or a night person? Can you study right after class or do you need to let it sit and digest after a while? Figuring out what works best for you will be so beneficial along the way. And likewise, if you can develop a routine of going to the same place or studying at the same time every single day, it will better enhance how you're studying. It's been proven that the more you do something at the same time or in the same location, the more your body is apt to do those things in that location. So if you go and study at the same time every day, you will remember that information at that time better. Your body is a muscle memory thing. So when you get to that time, you're more adept to remembering it. Likewise, when you go to that location, your mind and your body is prepared to start studying there. So develop those habits and develop those routines, and you'll be able to teach your body to study at those times. So let's get into this actual studying cycle. Previewing, and this refers to the information you get before class. Contrary to prior belief, teachers don't assign these readings to be mean or just for fun. They do it because it's actually really helpful. This is the academic equivalent of having to go to like a job interview that's an hour away and you've never driven there before and you have no idea where to park and you're freaking out about it. So what you do is a few days beforehand, you do the drive. You go to that place. You figure out how to park. So the day of your interview, you know where you're going and you're not stressing about it. This is the same concept. Before class, reviewing those information, scanning headlines, keywords, and diagrams, and figuring out what's important, and just familiarizing yourself with this new territory, so to speak, will help you be more prepared for the class time and you're actually learning it. So go through this, identify relevant notes, write down any questions you might have, which is also helpful because you can ask those questions during class. A lot of people skip this step, but I think it's one that will help you be the most prepared for studying and just attending that class and doing well in general. So it's an important one not to overlook. However, the most important step is to attend class, and no matter what that format looks like, you want to attend every single one of your classes, whether that means being there in person, sitting in that seat every single day you're there in person, or being online and attending the Zoom courses, attending the online forums and participating. No matter what it looks like, you want to sit there being attentive and ready to learn. No matter what you do, if you do not go to class, you will not do well in that course, I can guarantee. Now, let's talk about studying notes. I know that by this point in your life, you've probably developed a good note-taking system that works for you. So I just want to go over a few things quickly. You should know by now, but don't write everything down. If your teachers talk half as fast as I do, you're going to have a hard time physically writing down everything. And plus, it's really just impractical. You don't need every single word they said, but find a way to do the overview, those key ideas and concepts. And make sure you pay attention not only to what they say, but to what is written. Some teachers don't read verbatim off their PowerPoints, and likewise, some teachers don't put everything in their PowerPoints that they're going to say. So try to pay attention to both, whether it's a physical PowerPoint you're there in class, or it's something in the background, a video, kind of like this is. And by now, your note-taking style is probably set in stone, but I just want to go over a few points. If you are like the person on the left here, and you have these gorgeous, lovely color-coded notes, and there's diagrams, God bless you, you have beautiful notes, and I thank you for it. However, chances are there are going to be some of you that are more like this one on the right here. And it's messy, and it's sloppy, and it's disorganized, and it's a little bit ugly and hard to read. However, that works for that person. This person, full disclosure, this person is me, by the way. I am the person on the right. I just need an outline and doodles. That's what helps me take notes. My handwriting is atrocious if you can't tell, so I just need to find a way to help me remember these ideas, because if I try to write a lot, I'm not going to be able to read it. I do a lot of doodles in my notes. Full disclosure, my history notes for World War II are all in stick figures, and that's what works for me. It's a little non-conventional, but that's what I found works for me. Maybe something like Cornell notes can work really well. Maybe something like this one on the left over here can work. But find what works for you. There's a lot of different methods, and don't be afraid to try something out. And no matter what you do, there's no wrong way to take notes as long as you're taking notes. Now, reviewing, which is a little bit different than studying. So reviewing refers to that time right after when your class ends, or towards the end of class, or maybe 24 hours after your class. It's about giving yourself some time to process the information and go back and fill in any gaps of knowledge. Make sure you understand what you learn, kind of summarize everything that happened in your own words, and most of all, to ask questions. I cannot express this enough. It is so, so important to ask questions in a class. It is absolutely foolish for you to leave a class and still have a question. I'm going to give you a scenario. I want you to think of your favorite sandwich. Everybody has a favorite sandwich. I have not met somebody who hasn't. So imagine your absolute most favorite sandwich. Whether it's a nice cold cut, a big juicy burger, or some kind of veggie panini, no matter what it looks like, imagine you're going to order your favorite sandwich. You are thinking about this sandwich all day. You are so excited for it. You ask for the sandwich, you pay for this sandwich. And when you receive your order, they give you 2 pieces of bread instead. Is this what you ordered? Will this satisfy you? Are you going back and getting your order fixed? Are you going to go back and get your sandwich? The answer is yes. Of course you're going to go back and get your sandwich. That's not what you asked for. That's not what you paid for. So on the same note, why are you going to leave a class with any questions? You are paying for this class and paying for this information. Walking away and having a question or not understanding something or being confused is the equivalent of walking away with 2 pieces of bread. It's foolish, dumb, and a waste of money and time. So if you have a question, never feel foolish to ask it. You are more foolish to keep that question to yourself. So now that you've had your notes taken care of and you've had your questions answered, it's time to study. And I want to clarify, when I say study, I'm talking about more than just memorizing information. Studying is about forming a relationship with in between materials and finding a way to connect it in your mind in a way that makes sense for you. And there are so many different methods to study. So I can spend hours here listing them all, and that's not really going to help. What's important is you find a way that works best for you. For some people, that means outlines, charts, things like flashcards and repetition to just kind of glue it in their head. For me, flashcards have never really worked. I can stare at one for 2 days and still not remember what's on the back for it. That's not how my brain works. For me, the more creative assignments have worked better. Things like anagrams or songs have stuck information in my brain better. And those are both very viable methods as well. I'm sure if I asked anybody who grew up with the math that we did about PEMDAS, they're going to know how to do basic math because that type of anagram works really well to lodge that information in our brain. Another method that always works really well for me is teaching others. For some reason, something kind of switches in my brain when I have to teach somebody else. Suddenly, oh, I have to understand this information because I have to help them understand it. It's a switch that flips, and suddenly I'm more able to understand it in that moment. I know it doesn't quite make sense, but that's what works for me. So things like study groups and like that have worked as well. So all of these are viable and good methods to study. However, you need to figure out what's going to work best for you. And the only way to figure that out is to assess the information. And this is a step in the study cycle that most people tend to skip, more so than previewing. This step is about looking back and figuring out if what you did worked. Was it worthwhile? Did you take in this information enough? Or did it not work that well? And if it did work, fantastic, you have a wonderful new method to study. And if it didn't, that's okay. You learned that this method of studying isn't going to work for you. So you get to move on and try something else. Everybody learns differently. I'm going to keep repeating this, so there's no shame in trying. The only shame is if you do something that doesn't work and you still keep continuing to do the thing that didn't work. Again, you're going into that place and walking out with 2 pieces of bread, except this time you're asking for the bread. Doesn't make sense. So figure out what works best for you. Don't be afraid to try something that might be a little unconventional. I can have fun studying. I play music. I dance. I'm not going to lie. I have fun. I enjoy it. I find ways to make it sarcastic and things that I'll remember. And that's what works well to me. When I show people my notes, they're shocked, for lack of a better word. But hey, it works for me, so there's no shame to that. Find out what works best for you. Now, this is what we study for. We study for tests, we study for assignments, we study for learning the real world application. However, sometimes just studying isn't always enough. You want to make sure you're prepared for testing itself, which means getting enough sleep the night before. And I know people will swear by it, but I will bet money on it every single time. If you do an all-nighter, you will not do well on a test. It just can't happen. It won't work. When you do an all-nighter, you are frying your brain. You are not getting enough sleep. You're physically exhausting your body and your mind and preventing you from performing well. So please, I beg of you, do not pull all-nighters. Be sure you get enough sleep the night before the test and try to arrive early and be prepared. And that means having something to write with ready And possibly also having a laptop charger ready, because you don't want to be in the middle of an online test and have your laptop die, and there be a chance that you can't retake it. And most of all, try to relax. Though relaxing is a lot easier said than done. Everybody gets stressed before a test. So how do we relax before a test? The best thing to do is arrive early. You will feel so much more better prepared if you are there with like 5 minutes before, just to breathe and relax. If you start getting like an hour before, you're going to overthink and don't do it. It's just not worth it. So about 5 minutes before, maybe 10 minutes, get there. I know for myself, I used to do figure eights in Aquinas. I used to just walk up and down and around the stairs because I was so anxious before my test. And I used to walk and pace my energy out to get it out. I also would stretch sometimes, and that would help shake out my nervous energy. So walking and stretching and maybe just sitting and relaxing your muscles can work as well. For some people, listening to calming music or ASMR can work really well. There's a lot of really good apps for those kind of techniques. And this last tip might seem a little counterproductive, but avoid discussing the test before the test, and this will only fuel your anxiety. I'm going to give you an example. I was studying for chapter 4, I think it was, or what, I'm pretty sure it was chapter 4. But I worked really hard that week to study all that information. And when I go to class that morning, I sit to a girl next to me, the same girl I always sit at, and we're talking. And she looks to me and she's like, I studied chapter hard so hard, I think I could say all of it. Just completely spit verbatim what the words are. And I looked at her and I said, chapter 5. I thought it was chapter 4. So I sat there in a panic because I freaked out that I studied the wrong thing. Turns out I studied the right chapter. She was the one that was wrong. But I was so worked up, I did not perform as well on that test as I could have, even though I studied the right information. So anything that brings that anxiety level up will not help your performance in the actual test. So just try to relax, try to stay calm, and avoid discussing the test. It'll work so well beforehand. However, these techniques work really well when you know that there's a test. What do you do when you may have forgotten there's a test? And now I know you are all responsible college students and you would never purposely forget to study for a test, but we're all human. We make mistakes. So what can we do to be effective during those few 5 minutes of emergency studying before the test? First and foremost, do not try to read everything. It will not help you. Physically, it's impossible to read a 30-page chapter in 5 minutes and remember all that information, or even have time to read that whole chapter. It's not going to work, and you're going to overload your brain. It's the equivalent of a bunch of minions running in to stop a little tiny fire and trashing this whole building. You are going to destroy what good work is there, and again, keep you less prepared to take the actual test. If you are going to read over some notes or try to skim the chapter, do just that. Skim it. Go slow, look for those key heading and the charts, the diagrams, all those things we discussed earlier to help you familiarize yourself with the topic. Those will work really well to help you familiarize yourself with the topic later on. So don't specialize and focus on those key main concepts. And also consider your professor. They're the ones who did this test. They're the ones who have been teaching you. Was there ever a moment where they're in class like, hey, this is important, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, pay attention, you're going to want to remember this. That's going to be the information you want to remember. So take all those things in consideration of what to do when you have to study quickly. Though I don't recommend doing this every time, but if you are going to, this is how best to emergency study. So now we're getting into the important stuff. This virtual learning. This is kind of new territory for most people. Most people don't intend to take on-ground online classes. They only want on-ground. And it can feel a little bit different, but the best way to have an effective and successful online course is to treat it as real as your on-ground courses. So doing each of these things will help really well to help you do well. First of it is routine. When you have an on-ground class, you're going to the same place every single week at the same time, every single day. And you get into this routine, which makes it easy to be accountable for that class and responsible for the work in that class because you have structure for it. With an online class, it's easy to feel like there isn't structure, but that's not true. There is structure there. So to help yourself make it feel like you have more structure, stick with a routine. Try to do that work in the same time every day or the same place. Again, those same things we mentioned earlier. Find that routine that will work well for you and help keep you accountable. Another good thing to do is to test your equipment. We are a tech-savvy generation, so I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but it might be helpful if you have working internet before your online classes. Make sure you test everything that you have. Are you on a Zoom class? Do you need your camera, your audio, your sound? Is it working? Try to do the troubleshooting beforehand. It might be helpful to log on like a half hour before, just make sure everything is good, and then go back to it later when it's time for the actual class to start. It will help keep you prepared and prevent missing any of the class itself. And lastly, resources. We are blessed to be taking classes when we have the internet. We are blessed to be taking classes on the internet. We have access to infinite resources right at our fingertips, right during our class. If you're in class and your professor uses some big word and you don't know what it means, you don't have to sit there and not understand what it means because you're too ashamed to raise your hand and say, professor, what was that big fancy word you used? You have the option to open a new tab and Google the word and get the definition of it right then and there and let it enhance your learning rather than inhibit it. So there are so many good resources out there. On the same note, there are some less recommendable resources out there. Anybody and everybody can put anything on the internet without really any kind of censor. So make sure the information you're using is reliable. For example, citation makers don't work. I know so many people use them, but they really don't help you, right? They don't write them correctly. But a source like Quizlet is a really good one for studying. And likewise, if you're trying to study, stay away from Facebook and those kind of sites. They are not going to help you stay focused. So be mindful of the internet sources, both good and bad. They can really benefit your learning. But ultimately, the best tip I can give to you guys is to ask questions. College can be really hard. Not everybody is able to do it, and that's okay. You will not be the first person to struggle, and you will not be the last. So please don't be afraid to ask questions. When you are in class, don't settle for bread. Get your wonderful, glorious sandwich. Get the full meal out of it and be satisfied. And it's so important. I beg you not to forget that. There's a lot of different places you can get help. One of the best direct resources are your teachers. They are the one helping you. But I understand office hours can be a little hard to access, and especially with this online format, it can be hard to wait for an email back. So if you need help, the Academic Success Center is here. So what is the Academic Success Center? I hear you asking over the phone or camera or computer. Well, I'm so glad you asked, disembodied voice. The Academic Success Center is a one-stop shop for tutoring on campus. We have peer tutorings. These are students who have excelled in these subjects and are able to help you with its content. And look at this whole list of tutoring subjects. There's math, statistics, sciences, accounting, and finance. Look at all these tutoring subjects. We have so many we can help you with, and it's really easy to book an appointment. But before we talk about that, I do want to talk about the Writing Center in particular. So like I mentioned, I am a writing tutor. We are able to help you at any point in the writing process, no matter what you're struggling with or where you're struggling. But we can also help you with a little bit more. I've had appointments where people have come in really stressed, not knowing what they're doing and feeling confused about their work. And we just sat down and talked about it. With one girl, I once kind of helped her made an outline for her week. She had all these different assignments and felt overwhelmed, and we sat down and worked on that. So that's also an option of thing we can help you with. So whether it's an actual physical assignment, the prep work for an assignment, or the end and proofreading, that kind of stuff, we're happy to help you with anything and everything in between. And then lastly, our hours. So the Academic Success Center, though we will be having virtual appointments this year, like video call face-to-face rather than a chat box, we are still open. We'll be taking appointments during these times. So in order to make an appointment, you can either call, email us, or make an appointment through Navigate. All of our peer tutors are students or recent graduates of Albertus. So we know your teachers, we know what you're working on, and we want to be able to help you. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need help. We want to be here for you. And that's about it for all I have to say. If you guys have any further questions about studying or questions about anything I said, any resource I mentioned, or a tip you want further advice on, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can either reach out to the Academic Success Center, or I've also included my email here as well. So let me know if you have any questions. I hope this is helpful, and good luck at Albertus, Falcons. You can do this.